He is an impressive columnist. He has written for different people all around the world. We now have him on a regular basis with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Jonathan Salant. Jonathan, good evening, and it's great to see you again. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, and thanks for having me. I love doing this.
Amen. I love having you here. Look, before we talk about the real reason you're here, the president and all the things that are happening, and I just read something that was kind of staggering, and we'll pick up on that in just a moment, but this, our governor trying to celebrate a holiday Seder with his family. Somebody walks an hour with 2 bottles full of gasoline, scales a fence, Molotov cocktails, and if it wasn't for a steel door, it could have been a whole lot worse. Thank God nobody got hurt. What do you make of that story? It kind of ties into the president who's dealt with some assassination attempts in his time as far as in recent months. We live in a very scary time right now, do we not?
There is, and you saw somebody trying to get into the White House when Obama was president. There's a new fence around the White House now. The Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House is blocked off a lot more than it used to be blocked off. You had Paul Pelosi, the husband of the House Speaker at the time, attacked. People were just resorting to violence, and it's never been this bad. And I've covered politics for almost 50 years, and it's never been this bad.
The suspect who's in custody actually turned himself in. I was just reading another story, and he said that he basically didn't hold back. He said, I've had hatred for this guy, and if I would have got close enough to him, I would have used a hammer on him. I mean, what is happening to this hate that is just spread across our country rapidly? I mean, that's a very ugly statement, especially when you know what you're going to be dealing with in a court of law very soon.
Well, after the attempted assassination of President Trump in Butler, you had both sides saying, tone down the rhetoric. There's different ways to settle our differences than weapons. And it looks like it's fallen on deaf ears. People are still thinking this is the right thing to do. And one thing about Governor Shapiro is you survey Jews, and the one thing more Jews do than anything else is go to a Passover Seder.
Absolutely.
So this is extra symbolic. This is Governor Shapiro exercising his religious beliefs. And that's the day that this person chose to attack him or try to burn down the mansion.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible. Now, the president, lots of things have been happening. And, Josh Shapiro, many believe, will be the Democratic nominee in 2028. Nobody's covered more conventions than you. Before we talk about this president and the possibility of J.D. Vance, do you really think there's a good chance that Josh Shapiro could be the guy for the Democratic Party in 2028?
The big test will come next year. In fact, my last column was about that, in which Governor Shapiro is up for re-election in 2026. He gets a big victory. It'll certainly buttress any chances he has to be the next the Democratic nominee. I know Chris Christie used his re-election victory when he was in New Jersey to be a leading candidate for president. Didn't work too well to him, but he gave him a boost. Mario Cuomo, way back when I first was covering politics, and he was talked about a top Democratic contender, and he won a big re-election. And that, again, people look, he got all this support, and they looked at him as a front runner for the nomination. So if Governor Shapiro wants to run, he will be one of the leading candidates, at least at the beginning. Popular governor, won re-election, then won for 2 elections in a row, the most populous swing state in the country.
A columnist who you can read in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He's Jonathan Salant joining me right now. So I just read this statement and statistic that kind of blew me away because, you keep hearing about the fear of Social Security and Medicare, but all the other things that DOGE has been involved in, I keep hearing, but I actually saw that now 14% of Social Security as far as staffing has been cut. Look, I understand you've got to reel it in, but that's something I don't like to see, especially when I know there are a lot of people that Social Security serves their sole source of income. So how much more and when will it come to a halt? Or do you think this is just the beginning for the president and DOGE and Elon Musk?
It's up to the president. It can come to a halt tomorrow if the president says no more cutting. But there's a belief, an article of faith among some people that the government is just bloated bureaucrats. And let's cut them. You can cut 50% and nobody's going to be able to tell the difference. What we're seeing with things Social Security is a lot of those bureaucrats, they're not the deep state. They are people who answer the phones. They are people who make appointments. I'm on Social Security, and it takes hours to get through sometimes. Do you have a question? And those are the people that some people are getting cut. And people, you see people getting annoyed. Even supporters of the president are saying, wait a second, this is not what I signed up for. I need my Social Security. I have a problem. I want to be able to have somebody answer a phone.
Have you ever seen anything or so much activity so early on in an administration? Because really, presidential politics, conventions, and more have been your beat for a long time. We are living in unique times. I've never seen anything like this.
Well, I wasn't alive then, but this is like Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933. That's where we get the first 100 days milestone with a new president. It started with FDR during the Great Depression.
Now I know why I have you here. That's a great analogy. But do you think that this man is on the verge of maybe actually starting to, well, perform the art of the deal with this tariff story? And now he's talking about, a bit of a reprieve maybe in the automobile industry. He's also kind of put a pause on electronic items such as computers and iPhones, where China obviously is a big-time player. Do you think this thing is going to find a solution? Will we be able to work this thing out because there's just too much involved when it comes to this tariff story?
It really depends what side of the spectrum you're on. Republicans are saying, yes, President Trump is a wonderful deal maker, and this is what he's doing. And sometimes he says, yes, I'm waiting for a deal back. And then you read from the other side saying, no, the president has no idea what he's doing, and he's just doing willy-nilly, and he's in over his head. It really depends who you hear from.
I got to ask you about another story, very intriguing. So I'm at home last night, and I come upon Scott Pelley, one of the most respected journalists in the business, CBS, of course, 60 Minutes, and just a gut-wrenching but a incredible interview with Vladimir Zelensky on the heels of 9 children being killed after a bombing in a playground, talking about the war, the bully pulpit of Vladimir Putin, what needs to be done. President Trump kind of been leaning in with Vladimir Putin, and now he said he's losing patience for him because he's not living up to the ceasefire. What's happening with Ukraine, in your opinion, right now?
Well, remember, Russia attacked Ukraine. They tried the first, basically, war in Europe, a major war in Europe since World War II. We kept the peace for decades. And Ukraine's been able to stop the invasion. I think Russia thought it'd be a cakewalk, like the Iraq war when Cheney was the writer for saying we're going to be coming in a week and they're going to greet us with flowers. And the Iraq war in Afghanistan, the whole Middle East took years to settle. And I think the same thing's happening in Russia, in Ukraine, where Russia thought it'd be a cakewalk. It's not a cakewalk. Ukraine has been holding them back, and Europe's been supporting Ukraine, and the U.S. has been supporting Ukraine. And Putin has not gotten the victory he wants. The question is, President Trump came and said, I could settle the war. The question is, how does he settle the war, and what can he do to push pressure, frankly, Russia being the aggressor, what he can do to pressure Russia to stop attacking and do agree to a ceasefire.
All right, last thing for Jonathan Salant, columnist. You can read him in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. How serious is the president when it comes to the possibility? You mentioned FDR earlier. He died in his 3rd term. Obviously, the war was going on. The world was much different then. How serious do you think he is about possibly thinking or attempting, or is it even possible to seek a 3rd term?
Well, I don't put anything past President Trump in terms of what he would like to do. I mean, remember, he's been impeached twice. He was convicted of 34 felonies, and he was reelected as president. First president since Grover Cleveland to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. According to all the experts, there's no way President Trump can be elected to a 3rd term as president, even if he's elected, vice president, right? Vance is elected president, Trump's vice president, Vance resigns, Trump becomes president because the Constitution says no person can be elected to vice president who's ineligible to hold the office of president, and the Constitution says you cannot be elected president more than twice, which would make him illegal. But I'm not a legal expert. I would not be surprised if people are looking at it would like that. There's bills in Congress to repeal the amendment or change the amendment. But remember, the Republicans passed the amendment in response to FDR being elected to a 4th term. And boy, were they upset when Ronald Reagan couldn't run for a 3rd term.
Good stuff. What are you writing about next, and when can we see it?
Well, my column appears in the PG every other Friday. The next one I'm writing about is this whole fight over non-citizen voting, which is minuscule. House just passed a bill. President Trump's executive order addresses the issue. Problem is, non-citizens really don't vote. You're talking about minuscule. Let's put it this way. It looks like, and I'm not a mathematician, the odds of winning the state lottery are bigger than the number of percentages of non-citizens voting in elections.
Much appreciated, Jonathan. Thanks for joining me tonight. We'll do it again for sure. Keep up the great work.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jonathan Salant, a lot of respect for that man. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We got a special guest at the bottom of the hour, and we'll get to some news and notes right after this timeout. It's your Pratt Pack on KDK. Good evening.